Hi everyone, my name's Dr. Matt Williams. I'm a tutor in politics and what is known as the Access Fellow here at Jesus College at the University of Oxford. Now, what is one of the most common reasons why people fail to get into universities like Oxford that are highly competitive? It is that they have picked the wrong course. Universities like Oxford are operating in something a little bit like a job market in the sense that we are almost offering opportunities to prospective employees, if you like. And as an admissions tutor, when I'm looking through someone's application and interviewing them, it's like an employer looking for someone who will fit the requisite skills and potentiality to fill that place. What I don't want to do is to give someone a place who simply won't enjoy it, they won't like the opportunity, and they won't thrive under those conditions, and they won't make the most of it. So we try and match up people and their experiences to opportunities that we have available in a way that works out best for everybody. And so picking courses very carefully is hugely important. I learnt this the hard way when I was 17 and I applied to Cambridge University for a course that I absolutely did not want to study. I knew I wanted to study politics, but I tried to contort myself to a degree that in those days was called social and political sciences, which included stuff besides politics, which in those days I wasn't interested in. And that must have come across really clearly in the application process because I wasn't successful in that application. And I found a place at another university which was much better fitting my interests, which turned out to be Bristol University. And since coming here to Oxford and working in admissions, it's clear to me that course choice is one of the most important things that people often get wrong. And it's quite clear to see why they might get it wrong because it's very confusing and very complicated. So there's no judgment being passed here. There are 53 degrees available at the University of Oxford if you include Astrophoria Foundation years, which is an extra year on top of regular Oxford University degrees. There are also 9 European modern languages you can pursue and 10 Asian and Middle Eastern languages. So there's a huge variety of things you can study, and it makes choosing the right thing for you incredibly difficult. So how are you supposed to do it? The most common thing that people say is you should do something you enjoy, which sounds sort of almost ludicrously hedonistic. Surely you should do something useful so that you can get the skills and the capacity to earn a living and to support any dependents that you might have or currently have. And of course that's true, but the key thing to note is that universities set you up with transferable skills. So there's really nothing useless you can do at a university like Oxford. Any degree will set you up well for an enormous range of careers in the job market. So doing stuff that you enjoy is actually just the most hard-headed practical thing you can do if you want to maximize your potential for a future career. Doing stuff where you're bashing your head against a brick wall and you're not enjoying it is actually quite risky. So one of the reasons, for example, that people who are the first generation in their family to go to university sometimes struggle in admissions to university like Oxford compared to other more privileged students is because they gravitate towards our most competitive degrees, things like law and medicine. 25% of applicants who come from state schools, for example, cluster around just medicine and law. And many of those people will be very keen on studying those subjects and they will succeed. But a lot of people will just be applying to those subjects as a default because there may be some familial pressure or because they feel like those are the best ways to get a good career. But the sort of person that gets into law, for example, is the sort of person who is really into the law. They read case law, they go to their local court and they watch trials in the public galleries, right? They live and breathe law because they really enjoy it and therefore they succeed because it aligns with their interests. The sort of people that default to law because they want a career in the law are not likely to succeed in the application process because they just simply won't be motivated to assign their limited resources, their patience, their hard work, their effort into pursuing a goal they don't want to actually pursue. Whereas, of course, you could actually study anything. You could come here to Oxford and study modern languages, where the success rate of applications is 42%, rather than apply for law, where the success rate is just 10%. So there's a clear mismatch in people's ambitions and what they're interested in. And that's something that you've got to think very carefully about if you're applying to a very competitive university like Oxford. The next thing to think about is to consider what you are eligible for. The university website in its course listings will explain what sort of qualifications you need. It will state that you only need 3 A-levels for all of our degrees, and that's true. You don't need any more than 3 A-levels to be competitive. Where the website suggests that something like further mathematics could be recommended, such as is the case for computer science, it is likely that you will struggle to be competitive without computer science. It's not strictly required, but you will find it harder to compete in the highly mathematical aspects of the application process without it. So just be careful that your skills and experiences align with the opportunities, and if they don't, you might want to look for other courses. It's also worth noting that for many of our courses, there aren't many specific subjects required at A-level. So for law, for example, you don't need actually any particular subjects to be studying, provided you've got 3 good A-levels. So again, if you're doing stuff at A-level that you really enjoy, then it's likely that you could be successful if you commit to it. Finally, one of the most common things we see is that people aren't aware of the wide variety of courses that we have on offer, and so we receive relatively few applications for those slightly lesser known degrees. And that's not surprising, because many people perhaps don't know that they would enjoy certain subjects because they literally have never studied them before. And so a good idea is to see, well, I'm doing these subjects now at school, and I could apply for these other subjects at university. What would it be like to study that? You need to, as if you're applying for a job, trying to obtain experience in those subjects. So reading stuff from those subjects, or watching YouTube lectures about them, or listening to podcasts about them will give you the exposure, so that if someone asks you, are you into this subject? Are you ready to study it? You can credibly say, yes, I am. So for example, perhaps you might like to study archaeology and anthropology. You can't study that at school, but you can study it here at Oxford, and you might have the right sort of qualifications to do so. What about earth sciences, which is mostly geology? That's a really cool subject. Relatively few people apply for it, but again, it will set you up with so many potential careers. What about material science? Ditto. What about human sciences? What about psychology, philosophy, and linguistics, right? What a cool set of subjects that is. Very few people will have studied any of those things before. They will make for a fascinating career, and you can demonstrate before you apply that you're ready to study it simply by doing the sorts of things that students on those courses would do. So ultimately, the point is that imagine that applying to university is like applying for a job. You need to have credible evidence that you are ready and able and motivated to do that job, to study that subject. And admissions tutors like me will look to see that you are a good fit for the place, partly for your sake, so that you actually enjoy it. So please be very careful with course choice. Don't twist yourself to fit an institution. Make sure that the institution is well set up to provide you with the course that you want to study and you will enjoy. I hope that's been helpful. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.